it's not just future. I mean, there are some clear targets. If you are in the area of any advanced quantum research, you're a target. You are, of course, doing AI in the frontier labs would be a target. In fact, it's sort of like a list of top technologies that China is very much interested in. And if you're on that list, then yeah, you should actually you should take a lot more
Yeah.
precautions, and not just in China, right? You should take precautions wherever you are.
The Adversarial Podcast. Why you gotta be so adversarial? It's time to get adversarial.
Welcome back to the Adversarial Podcast. Great to be back on air after a little bit of a lull. I know I'm on summer vacation, quite literally here here at the beach. Looks like you guys are staying put for a minute. Yeah, Mario, you were in France for just quite recently,
Couple
no?
of weeks. Yeah, a couple of weeks. I just missed the 100+ degree weather in Paris.
Man, I heard.
But it was
Yeah.
getting hot. It was definitely getting hot. But it was look, everyone that listens to our podcast, if you're doubting the power of vacation, don't go and take vacation. Go and recharge your battery. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, the Europeans know how to take vacation, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and don't forget Tour de France is kicking off pretty soon too, so we've got another reason
Yeah.
to unplug. Well, hey, speaking of travel, this is gonna be the best segue ever. In one of the CISO communities I'm in, someone asked a question, and man, I have had this discussion so many times over the decades, but I'm always willing to change my thinking, and things change. Travel restrictions, right? And the question came up, quite tactically, which was like, "Are you guys issuing burner phones? Are you guys issuing burner laptops when people travel to China?" And just starting there, and I'll preview what I'm going to do, so it doesn't sound like I set you guys up just to knock you down. My take on this is always that answer needs to be different for every organization, and they need to take into account like what the threat profile is. Uh, do you guys feel like you have a go-to, and especially now that you both came from really big companies, and now you're in startups, are you, if and when you have to approach that, are you going to have the same stance that you did at previous jobs? And if not, is it because of the company size or because you've evolved in your thinking?
Well, it's not evolving in our thinking as much as evolving in the threat actor tactics and how they get in and what they do to get in. With respect to having a burner phone, the question I guess is like, why specifically a burner phone? What are you trying to avoid, or what are you trying to mitigate? One, of course, is your phone gets inspected, or they want to know what's actually on your phone. And generally speaking, even if you're private phones, you lock it, and it's pretty much you can't get into it, right? But the other one,
so.
I think, well,
I mean, I think a lot of people don't believe that. A lot of CISOs are kind of tenuous with the technical facts, and they just assume anyone can get into a phone. What are you saying? That's not true? An iOS device?
I would say, yeah. So first of all, I'm talking iOS, Android, a whole bunch, unless you're talking like Samsung or some of the more lockdown versions of Android. But generally speaking, yeah, if you put it into lockdown mode, you're pretty good. But there's a different concern that's emerging that's become more problematic, and that's just more tracing, tracking of the individual themselves. And I think that's going to be a burner phone could help you there, but there are some other more elegant approaches that I've seen. One is called CAPE, CAPE, and they operate a mobile network, a mobile virtual network. They're a mobile virtual network operator that's global, and I'm going to mess up some of the details here, but they assign your phone, or they assign like a million different IMEI identifiers with the phone numbers, and so tracing who's who, and it gets cycled on a regular basis. So tracing who you actually are is incredibly difficult for anybody who's on the other end listening. So again, the question is, what's the threat model that you're actually concerned about? If it's about the content on your phone, that's one thing. But I think the more recent or more emerging concern is really just I don't want myself or my executive being tracked wherever they go. I mean, granted, some of these folks,
But it's China, though, Sounil. I mean, they're gonna, bro, right? They're gonna know where you're, if you
yeah, I
are.
was going to say, granted,
Right.
some of these
Sorry, go
people
ahead.
are traced or tailed anyway, so that,
Yeah.
you got that.
But
Yeah. Sorry
let's
about
split the
that.
difference. So like I always struggle to find like a perfect archetypical company. But a lot of people listening to us are CISOs, and not all of them are the CISO of Cargill, or which I would just argue is like, okay, maybe that would be a target for espionage and giving commercial favor to incumbents in the Chinese marketplace, something like that. Absent that extremity, the majority of companies, middle of the road, even billion-dollar publicly listed companies, but that long tail of them, um, are one, are their executives, when in China, being tracked, an important issue? And if so, does this phone even matter? I mean, if I'm China and I'm trying to track this phone, and now Cape is messing that up, and aren't I putting 3 people with sunglasses in a car just tracking them? Like, why would I mess around with the phone?
Yeah,
I
I mean,
have boots on the ground.
if you're trying to find if you're trying to get the physical presence, that's one thing. But if the threat model involves, okay, the adversary knows my executive's phone number or something of that sort, and they want to send, um, zero click RCE. Okay, well, that creates the avenue of opportunity there. Again, it goes back to the threat model. There are options to help mitigate having to bring a burner phone in, or have a phone that you use regularly that's really not a burner phone, but serves as your means to remain as anonymous as possible or as untraceable as possible.
I mean, I think a burner phone. Okay, so outside
Well, and
of
talk about
everybody.
laptops too, not just phones. We're talking about
Yeah,
laptops,
yeah. No, I mean
burner
just a
laptops.
laptop as well. Yeah, yeah, totally. The whole. I think everybody's. Let's just echo the same thing. Threat model. You can't do this for everybody, right? You don't for every company or even everybody in a company as well. Um, just it's not. It's painful. It's very painful when you try to have these burner phones, burner laptops. It is such a political battle. Nobody's ever happy with you as you set these things up. I did. I had to force it, and nobody was ever happy with me. And there was always like the argument of, well, he's the one that always gets me is the one where they actually have a relative who's sick and they need to go there and help that relative. And my whole argument was, you're not working, you're not going to production, you're not accessing code, you're not going to write production when you're in China. End of story. That was my position. It's really difficult to have that conversation when the employee's family member is ill and they need to genuinely go take care of them. And, you have to, like I said, it takes a political hit. So,
Yeah.
I guess where I'm going with this, Jerry, besides you got to look the risk of the company and the individual, but let's just say you're one of those risky in situations or profile. I've drawn the line on production and code base, which is a
Yeah,
pain in the
so
ass.
what they do while they're there, not just like, I think it's okay and fair to actually ask for someone to spell out the kill chain that they're worried about. And when people are like, no, I don't want to do all that technical stuff, but just trust me, this isn't good. That's never a good place to come from. So like talking about, let's do the threat model, right? You're either worried with the laptop in particular, and what you always hear is all the laptops for anybody who's an executive or anything. The maids come in at night and they unscrew the hard drives and they take it out, and they usually just leave it there, and everybody's supposed to assume, oh yeah, if they take a hard drive, you know about it. What does that mean? Like, some people will say more specifically they'll clone the hard drive. Okay, now we're talking. Put it back. Now you've got this replica of the hard drive and executive, right? What are you going to get off of that? If so, we have BitLocker or whatever, but that's always been stupid. So let's just pretend it doesn't work. And now they can actually read the whole hard drive. I think what we all get to in conversation pretty quickly is it's not the data and the Word docs and all that, but it's the session credentials or the credentials themselves, if somehow that's on there. So now they can log in, right? If somebody logs in as your executive from another spot, red alarms go off, right? I mean, and that's we're not. We always hear stories that the maids go in and get to the hard drive.
Yeah.
We never hear stories that, hey, we had a duplicate login and we investigated it, and it was after someone came back from China. And you don't have to say that, and it was from China. Let's just say they're going to mask themselves and all that. But some competing session from another identity after the person came home from China. Like, why can't we? Why are we not hearing about that all the time? And if not, what is the maid doing with the hard drive? Yeah, I mean, people we all know and trust are educating our executives with these stories all the time. What is the answer to that I'm missing?
And
What are they
then
doing with the hard drives?
I mean, the session point that you're bringing up, most sessions are not going to be active in life for a long time. I mean, there are
Let's
some
pretend they
issues.
are.
Right.
We were
Well,
CISOs. Did you guys find a lot of people, these sessions being replayed from bizarre places after someone traveled to China? And, and if is there something else on the laptop that I'm not thinking of that people can get that they all want, that they're willing to burn all their tradecraft and sources over?
what I saw the most of, and Sounil, please, take it from here. But here's my only point is what I saw were employees working in our, offices outside of China who'd VPN to China. That was kind of always concerning and scary. And then we
Sweet.
definitely blocked it after we talked to him and said, what the fuck are you guys doing? Blah, blah, blah. Because more like all the time, they wanted to watch some Chinese soap opera. Now, maybe I'm falling for that trick or whatever. That's the one trick. These are not
No,
the
I
droids
think
you
you're
need to be
right.
looking at. But most people just wanted to go freaking watch
So
something.
the
Go ahead, Sunil.
uh, to Jerry, your point about burning assets. I I wouldn't. We of course wouldn't do that with just any random target. We would want to do that with specific people of high interest, high value interest. And the other thing is, you wouldn't want to do that. You don't necessarily need to do that in China. You can do that in Vienna, Austria. You can do that in
Yeah.
London. You can do that
Yeah.
in a lot of friend. You can do it in you can do it in the
Atlanta.
U.S. Okay,
Yeah.
Totally.
right? Because the evil mate scenario, just it's remarkably easy to. Anyway, but the point is that China, you don't have to be in China to do that. In fact, actually, one time when I did travel to China, I brought a secret camera recorder, pointed it to
Yes.
my laptop,
Yes.
and just watched, right? And
Yeah,
and
but
I
you caught
left
the
my
maid. You caught the maid
well,
with the
no,
screwdriver, right? Of course you did.
of
They're
course.
there, right?
Well, the irony of all that is, and I left my laptop like visible, and I put
Hey, you got to tell us
like
this story,
the
Sunil.
head
This
of
is
R&D.
crazy.
My business card was on top of it, and it made it very clear that I was in charge of R&D and a bunch of other interesting things. The maid was extraordinarily careful to not even touch the computer. She dusted around it, like she was like completely like, do not even disturb anything. So I was like, okay. But I mean, then again, that's I'm not a target, but I'm just saying that was that was my experience.
Can I just say that wouldn't it be easier? I mean, okay, physically stealing so sexy, so espionage, yada yada yada. Man, all it takes is just somebody sending you a phishing attack email or calling you on your phone and acting like you're somebody's buddy and you need help. Can you reset my password, kind of thing?
Oh, with no
That's the
risk to them.
That's
Yeah.
the easiest way now, man. Like
Well, the other thing that you hear, like, it can continue with the threat model, right? So you get on the hard drive, like those even exist, and get something off of there, supposedly. Yeah. The other one is that you're going to plant a beacon, so that because somehow that's easier. And for one, if people came back from China and they were on, I know not everybody has sophisticated controls, but China can't be certain who does or who doesn't. And when the one person comes back and has Vectra, or I don't know what people use for that kind of thing these days, and they notice, hey, this laptop, I mean, that's IR, right? I mean, isn't that what DFIR and incident response supposedly does at companies where we keep hiring all these people? Supposedly they're looking for any suspicious activity. Where's all the documented cases of came back from China, found this beacon, traced it down to a firmware implant? Now I keep hearing, oh yeah, there were firmware implants, but I never hear we caught them on the beacon. And if there's no beacon and no call out, at some point, who cares about the malware? Because if the thing can't do anything, it's not talking anything. That, for all I know, all of our, UEFI code is doing that, right? Like, So it just doesn't make sense to me that that's part of the tradecraft. And, even when people can get some kind of, beaconing malware out or something like that, they're not going to burn that kind of thing on this nation state
Yeah.
espionage threat objective, I think.
If you're
I don't know.
working for some company that's building some future weapons in for the United States,
Hmm.
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
but I
you
mean,
know what I
even
mean?
yes. Well, it's not just future. I mean, there are some clear targets. If you are in the area of any advanced quantum research, you're a target. You are, of course, doing AI in the frontier labs, would be a target. In fact, it's sort of like a list of top technologies that China is very much interested in. And if you're on that list, then yeah, you should actually you should take a lot more
Yeah,
precautions, and not just in China, right? You should take precautions wherever you are.
100%. Yeah, I mean, it's not that hard for if there's an individual in doing quantum research at IBM and China decides that person is a target of interest for espionage purposes, they could start going after them right now. There's no need to wait for them to travel at all, right? With a whole host of, how do I target them? Where are they going to be this week? And where do I plant malware? Something like that. So I don't know. I'm not completely buying it. And where it hit close to home for me, so to speak, is you remember when the Hong Kong handover to China took place, right after the 100-year lease or whatever it was. And when that happened, we had a lot of employees in Southeast Asia um and that would travel and Singapore that would travel into Hong Kong a lot. And they were starting to interdict people as they were traveling into Hong Kong. And I remember specifically because in financial services, we talked about it a lot and we double checked. Are you serious? Who was it? Was it somebody you knew or whatever? Or is it real? But they were getting asked for their PIN numbers sometimes at the airport on their mobile devices
mm.
because China is subject to the laws of physics and cryptography and all of that. And they're like, oh, you want me to actually see the phone? I need the PIN. So that was definitely real. And it showed you what happened when people actually tried.
Hmm. Yeah, those I should obey this rule myself when it comes to like travel, but have printed boarding passes and not use your phone for customs or for anything that results in them being able to look at your phone.
Was that right? You don't use the ticket that comes in your wallet that you can put on a wallet, like your iPhone
Well,
wallet?
that means you have to have your phone open, right?
No, I see what you. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I'm
one thing
not
we would
that
always tell
important, guys. That's the thing for me. That's what I say. I don't work. It's not
But the
like I
thing
work for a
is, like,
nuclear
what we would always
company.
tell people is if
Yeah,
security asks you for your PIN, we wouldn't say give it to them, don't give it to them. Who cares about that? We'd just say, let us know. Right. So we'd have some threat intelligence. Like, let us know the
totally,
data set. So on
totally,
our podcast 10 years later, we could
totally.
talk about whatever. And nonetheless, we'd not get any.
Yeah, totally. I would have what I would also experience. I wanted to know what people did. I wanted to do it. I was watching what the attackers may be trying to do. I want to
Of
learn from
course.
that. I want to learn their techniques. That's what
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
want to know. So I got a bunch of honeypot employees who are going to China and some, no, seriously. I mean, that's the way you kind of think about it. It's like, okay,
Yes. Yes.
let's
Yeah.
play
I
it a
like it.
little bit. Put them in a little sandbox. This is not going to be your major engineer who's going to actually production. Somebody marketing, please don't take offense, anybody in marketing that listens to our show, but you might not have access to production, but I do want to see what they do to your machine. It'll be interesting.
Yeah. Well, we had an intelligence agency reach out to us once. And this is really interesting because I don't know, maybe you never know, but only a piece of the story. But it seemed like they were kind of playing the same game of like trying to that we are of like trying to honeypot and trying to figure it out. And they said, "Hey, will you take a key executive who should be a target of interest, who's traveling to China, and can we have the laptop when they come back? And we want to do our forensics, or um, and they did, and we did too and we didn't find anything. And they told us that they didn't find anything. Of course, you never really know, but it just shows like they're probably having these same conversations of like, "Where's the video with the maid? Come on, we keep hearing this stuff. Are my sources not any good? These are executives at Fortune 500 companies that swear this is happening. Where is it?" Yeah. All right. Enough about travel. I'm sure that'll come up again because it's perennial for sure. Time for our listeners' corner. Now, we this is great. I traveled up to New York for the AI Storm series that Sunil's partner Gotti and him have put together with Cloud Security Alliance and a couple other groups. Awesome, super well attended, high level of interest, and just for anyone not familiar with it, this is coming off the back of Mythos and cybersecurity and the threat of AI and how it's going to change things. And it was packed. I don't know what the count was, but probably 250 people or so. But off of that, what was cool is I met some listeners to the podcast, quite a few actually. That was really awesome. So great to have that support. And one person asked, "Hey, Sunil's Cyber Defense Matrix. I grew up reading that. Does that make you feel old, Sunil?" And they say, "Is it going to be updated? Does it have any contextual additions needed because of AI?" And I pinged Sunil on that and realized, oh, we should answer that on the air. So Sunil, is there going to be an update to the CDM because of AI?
Well, so Lenny Zeltzer, who teaches at SANS, used to be the CISO over at Axonius, he and I released something called the AI Defense Matrix. So aidefensematrix.com, defense with an S, not a C, by the way, where we capture a lot of the new attack surfaces associated with AI systems that are not covered through traditional security capabilities. We tried to capture that in the AI defense matrix, and consider it like a alpha version at this point. There's I when I look at it, I'm sort of like, oh, you know what? There are things that don't sit with me well still, but it is a version that we released for the sake of just having something out there, and it's there and it's workable. And yeah, check it out. Now, is there going to be an update to the book itself? Probably. Well, yes.
You're
At
one
some
prompt
point.
away, Sunil. You're one prompt away from having a new version of the book.
Yeah.
Claude, take my AI defense matrix and merge it into CDM and tell my publisher and get a new.
Well, then Claude will come back and give you an honest caveat of some sort that maybe you should write it yourself. But anyway, no, I actually I for those who have a copy of the book, please note that the M dashes that are there preceded ChatGPT.
Yes,
Okay,
I
Me
use
too, I swear.
dashes all the time, dude. I use dashes
I
all
used
the
to.
time.
Now I can't. You
That
can't
is-
do it anymore.
I cannot
Yeah,
believe you can't. That's like part of my writing, man.
it is,
was.
and it's very appropriate for for how
Where do you
write.
think
Anyway,
LLMs learned, guys?
Sunil, let me ask
my
you.
book.
Let me get let me get
Exactly.
down to the rawness of it all. Okay, this is a question I'm asked often, and I'm still struggle answering that question. So I'm going to ask you, and Jerry, you as well. Is there fundamentally something so different about AI that somehow you have to rewrite the whole security frameworks that we developed in the past?
Oh man, what a great
Your
fundamental
book.
question. Yeah.
Sorry, I mean,
Yeah.
Sunil, now,
Yeah, Sunil, hit
Yeah,
it.
well, so what's captured in the AI defense matrix are more just the nature of the attack surfaces themselves. The attack surfaces are, this is the case with any new technology. You take IoT, you take AI systems, you take quantum even, and there are new types of attack surfaces that your traditional security controls just won't be able to cover. But they rhyme, right? And what we see in the AI defense matrix is they rhyme with the original device application network data user sort of view. So, for example, on the user view, we said, what exactly is an agentic identity? Okay, what is an agent identity, and how do we look at that as a new type of an attack surface? So there's a lot of parallels that we have with the old ways to do security, but it is still a distinctly new attack surface that we need to consider new ways of doing controls.
Yeah, I think one thing about at first it was a bit frustrating with the whole Mythos and then like the AI storm and that sort of thing. But now I realize it's just like got to meet people where they are. the literal issue that came out with Mythos was the speed of detecting vulnerabilities in source code. Like that was the specific tactical issue. And so the only wave or worry that people should come out with is there are going to be a bunch of CVEs. Right? And that's kind of what, and a lot of discussion has been around it, which has been really great. But then people now bundle in when they say Mythos, they also mean AI as an attacker. They mean attacks on the new AI attack surface, so like prompt injection and all that stuff that really has nothing to do with Mythos. But like I said, okay, cool. We'll just use Mythos as a proxy for cybersecurity domain, completely writ large when it comes to AI in some case. But I do think you need to break all those things apart. So to me, Sunil, and I could interpret it wrong, but when you talk about an attack surface changing, to me it means the companies of tomorrow on the production side, they may have and probably will inputs in their applications, and we used to have to worry about SQL injection and whatever else it may be. And now we have to worry about prompt injection and about architecture and design, these like logic flaws that have a different class and a different set of expertise to analyze.
Yeah, so some of y'all may have heard that the three V's: velocity, variety, volume. And so you could say that in some respects, well, AI really changes velocity and volume and variety in some fashion or another. I think the challenge that we face here is, well, so if someone were to say, hey, this is just the same old thing, but with higher velocity, volume, and variety, yes, that's true, but there's some fundamental paradigms or fundamental assumptions that we have that need to be re-examined or reevaluated. So with Mythos, it actually wasn't necessarily the volume or velocity of discovering vulnerabilities. It was actually on the exploit side, right? That not only can I find these vulnerabilities, but rather I can also quickly increase the velocity and therefore also the volume of exploits that emerge. So the perspective here then is, if we are operating with a fundamental assumption of a certain volume or a certain velocity in our own capacity to handle those things, then we need to go back and revisit those assumptions. So this is one of those assumptions that I've mentioned at the summit, which is we at Bank of America, we weren't considering ourselves to be a high velocity engineering organization. We didn't consider ourselves to be like a Netflix, but I would argue we should actually now consider ourselves like a Netflix.
Now
Yeah.
you're saying today.
Now,
Okay.
for anybody using Claude or Claude Code or any of these coding agents, you are a high velocity engineering organization. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
And
You
if
know,
you
as the
are,
cave guy here, the cave person in the group here, I'm just going to go back. I'm just going to drag my knuckles and just going to drag them on the ground because I'm prehistoric here. But to me, it's just, I feel like the law of relativity. Yes, things are getting more voluminous. Yes, they're going faster. Yes, they're easier to find, faster to find exploits. But if you use the same technology as a defender, then I would argue you can also use those to find yourself and to protect yourself. But if you're trying to play a different game where you're saying, okay, somebody fight, again, I'm playing
well,
caveman
no,
here.
no. So I think that it's the same argument that one can make about cloud computing. You can look at cloud computing as yet another, just somebody else's computer, or you can say, hold on, we actually need to think about this differently. It's a whole new operating model, and that operating model has to account for the distinctiveness of what makes cloud more voluminous, faster, or more,
Less
what the
friction,
variety is
less
like,
friction,
right?
physical friction to get things deployed.
Yeah, and that shifted, for example, who actually does the deployment, who actually creates infrastructure from the infrastructure teams to the developer, right?
Fascinating.
So there were lots of things that fundamentally changed, that had to change because of that. So in the same way, a lot of people, we could look at AI as just more automation,
Fascinating.
but that is like saying cloud computing is just another person's computer. AI is a whole nother operating model, and we have to really think in that sort of way based on the changes that we're seeing.
Fascinating.
I
It
think
reminds me.
when I started, talking about the attack surface stuff, and I was saying, I started with production and like ingress, if you will. The other piece of the attack surface that changed, it's kind of baked into what you guys are talking about to some extent, is that it used to be like one of my cool little tricks was if anybody ran "Who am I?" investigate it, right? Oh, Jerry, that's stupid. It's fundamentally wrong. It's awesome. It works great. If you don't want to get hacked. I mean, if you just want to play games and play frameworks, whatever, you don't have to do that. But if you actually want to stop people, you block TLDs and look at anybody who ran "Who am I?" and win. And it might not last forever, but it'll last for your career. That's so stupid, I know, but it works like a charm, right? And you have legitimate people that are on "Who am I?" and you take a look, you're like, oh, okay, cool, that's great. And then you have all kinds of malware that would just have that as part of whatever it is.
Yeah.
I mean, as an example of like something. And the attack surface has changed with AI is that everybody's running "Who am I?" now, because maybe not literally, but if you think about the commands that you see Claude running on a desktop, they're all the litany of things that you could have said if the CFO runs grep, something's up. Now you can't say that in a way. On the other hand, the problem isn't that people were doing that and now it's just a mess and they can't see signal through noise because the CFO is running grep. That's not really true. Nobody really was even looking through process execution and doing any of that. Because if you were, it's so dumb. But now it's like if you run grep and the parent process isn't Claude, then give it attention. You still win. It's just so easy.
I do want to highlight. I do want to pull the thread on what Sounil said, because it resonates with something that happened this week with our group, our company. So we were talking about some security questions that we had, and that is that the power to do more now, the power to do more technical capabilities is now at the hands of people who may not have the engineering background, let alone the security background, to know what they're doing. It's just super easy to create things now, but it's still the fundamentals go back to, well, do you know how to do it securely? Are you thinking about how is this going to scale? What potentially could
But
be exposed if you were
let's
to
be
do that?
specific about it, right? 'Cause I mean,
I'll
you're
give
right
you
to
an
some degree.
example. I'll give you a real example.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I had we had an intern over the summer. Great, God bless, really smart kid, love him. Not an engineer guy per se, not poo-pooing on the business people either, but he's from the business side, and he wanted to he wrote a script using Claude, and he wants to use the script so then it could interact with Slack, and then Slack can do X. But the Slack account that they want to do is going to be able to read everybody's freaking Slack communication and do many things, not just read, but also write. And we're like, my security guys and I looked at each other and said, okay, well, where's the script running? What is the script? How do you ensure that it doesn't get modified by somebody X? Because today it does this. How do you ensure it doesn't do X afterwards? And that's where you start seeing the wheels come off.
Yeah, but I
In
mean,
some
if
of
you
these
think about
cases.
like, I hear you, and like in general, you have a lot of people YOLO in it. I think when you have um and people manually or via AI bringing down third-party libraries, not willy-nilly all the time. Okay, now you got a new attack surface because that which has been targeting developers for a long time can now target a lot more people if Claude brings down a malicious library or something like that. The architectural issue where they're going to do things that are not smart. So he's going to have some key or token that can log into Slack with some account. And there's a few different problems. There's a few CISO problems with that. One is you're going to take a credential and feed it to Claude. Yeah, that's fine. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nothing bad is going to come of that. CISOs are going to complain about it, scream about it. Nothing bad is going to come of that. You feed your name and password to Claude. It's icky, but none of that's going to come of that. So that shouldn't be keeping us up at night. They are going to dump it around on the hard
Wait a
drive
second.
somewhere.
Wait. So there's a difference.
Okay, yeah, you can pick them apart. Well, let me throw one more out there, and then you can pick them both apart.
Go.
The other one I would say is that they're going to leave that credential sitting on the hard drive, and
Yes.
now when they get info stealed or team PCP'd,
That's right.
it's going to be a real credential that matters instead of the crap that the bad guy would have got before. But I don't think Anthropic is going to take these credentials and put them in an LLM response to some random criminals of, tell me about all the credentials that you learned about. That's a myth.
Yeah, I'm not concerned with that. I mean, with zero data retention and whatever else. And anyway, I would trust Anthropic to hold some of those secrets, but also say they probably had other more interesting secrets than our password.
Their motivations aren't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think that to your point, though, the second point, it points to just I was going to say the basics, but I don't want to say that. It points to just bad practices, bad anti-patterns. It points to anti-patterns, right? So, and this is not easy, and that's why I was going to say it's not basics, but it's something that really is a good pattern that defeats those anti-patterns, which is everyone has password managers, and every password manager I know of has a way to be able to call it for your secrets so that your secrets are never actually on your hard drive. It takes a little effort, and it requires you to make that a standard practice, but that is such a good standard practice that should become the basics, and we haven't really made that we haven't made that super easy. And I think that's what we need to do. And so I think, anyway, my point is that, I don't care I don't care that much about Anthropic getting those, but I care that that's even there for people to
Yeah.
send to Anthropic at all.
I'm not going to try to pat ourselves here in the back, but I will say that, I mean, in this situation I was talking about the Slack in the script. The reason even though we're a small company, but stuff happens. You can never know everything that's going on, even in small companies. That's why you design things in a certain way. I'm preaching to the choir here, folks, right? You got to first do a risk-based approach and then determine what controls you want to apply. In this situation, the reason we found out about it was because the kid contacted us and said, "Hey, I'm unable to run this because I'm getting blocked."
Way to go.
Well, as he should have. As he should have. Yes.
Exact
Yeah.
point.
There was actually an insight that came. I think this was from Mike Wilkes during one of the summits that Jerry mentioned. His comment was, "Hey, look, if you're running agents in your environment like Claude Code, and you're not getting alerts constantly about it trying to privesc or doing things that are just completely unusual for the person that is for somebody in finance who's running grep, okay, then it means that you just don't have any kind of alerting of that sort, which is completely valid, right? To Jerry, your point, some of these things should be lighting up like a Christmas tree, right? And then you put an exception that says, okay, well, if it's coming from cloud, then we'll ignore it from here on. But those should have been firing for people who have alerts on these kind of things. And again, if they're not firing, something else is wrong here.
And it's a great test because it was a benign, it was a positive alert. It's a good false positive. So we should all be thankful for that. And then, like you said, you then say it's okay to do this whole slew of activity if the parent process is Claude and assign binary and so on. And then people jump on, well, what if the binary is backdoored and the keys are anyway?
So
life,
I think, Mario, to your point about this intern, the fact that the intern couldn't do it is actually a good sign, right?
Correct.
It means you have a control in there that prevents those stupid things from happening arbitrarily.
Which is, I know again, I'm not trying to pat ourselves in the back here, but it's the stuff we've been talking about. You, Sounil, and Jerry, you talk about this sort of stuff. You apply some of these controls for this very reason, right? But are you going to do it for everything, everywhere, everyone?
Yeah, I mean, if anything, this whole wave of the next wave of security will just make bad processes not able to hide anymore. I think it just says, if you did things really well 20 years ago, you're really going to be happy because those things are going to be flexed a lot more.
And let's actually, I wouldn't call them bad processes, but I would call them outdated processes because
why is me unsustainable process?
For the volume, variety, and velocity that we're seeing now, a lot of those may be entirely unsustainable or are based on assumptions that it's going to be manageable by humans.
I have this thing, and maybe it'll lead into the other topic we want to talk about. But one of the things that it's kind of, this is what people know me about, and I'll say these crazy things like, thou shall not have a security breach when you're a startup in your first 2 years. End of story. Enough said. You cannot have a security breach. You have a security breach, you're done with. Over. At this early stage in a company.
Cheaper than marketing, Mario.
It's if you're at an early stage in a company and you're trying to get people to trust you, especially with their data, the idea that you're going to have a security data breach in your first 2 years.
What you're saying makes perfect sense. It's totally logical.
Right? I agree from an optics standpoint, But I would also say, especially with a lot of the supply chain breaches, NPM package breaches that we're seeing. Fortunately, knock on wood, we haven't been hit by that, but uh, they're close calls, and we may not show up on the news only if we ever did get hit. We may not show up on the news only because we're not that big of a target to begin with, but it is certainly. I wouldn't be surprised if a security startup who is security conscious gets breached by one of these npm packages, or gets one of their developers breached by these npm packages, just because they haven't shelled out for something like socket.dev, or they just don't have the right, they didn't think about
Dev.
hey, no, I like for us.
It reminds
he's a
me
good
of
guy.
something I did a long time ago. My God, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no, do you remember? I mean, if you guys noticed the marketing that's come out of that group, I just blacked them out immediately. Like, first they pretended that Team PCP gave them a shout out and said that the only thing that stops them is that company. And, they weren't like, oh, no, we're just kidding. It was like, let everybody talk about it and figure it out and generate fake buzz. And I just thought that was so icky. Like, I don't know.
I have no vested interest in. I wish I had vested interest in, but no. But I don't have any vested interest. I would say I've enjoyed they have a solid product. They don't need to do that kind of marketing. To Jerry's point, I think they have a pretty good
It just
reputation.
undermines credibility, but
Yeah.
either way. Well, I mean, to Mario's point, and maybe just to build on what you were about to talk about, Sounil. So we're all CISOs, ex-CISOs who are founders now. So I think a really good question people can do ask is, how would you architect a startup or a company if a CISO started it? So here we got it, like security-wise. And a different way of putting it is, what would you do first? What are you doing first? Compliance or security? Right? And like, you might, you give me the derp face, Sounil, but like even the defense matrices that you have created over the years, you've architected them by frameworks, right? Like your x-axis, if I remember right, in the new one in particular, it's like NIST 2.0, right? Govern, identify, protect, detect, cover.
Yeah.
Blah, blah,
Well,
but
I
that's
think to
kind of
answer
like
to your question,
compliance based.
well, yeah, and this is where I cringe, right? Because I think the perspective I would have is, if you do security well, you already get you get compliance for free.
That's exactly
So to
it,
speak,
right
right?
there.
Stole
That's
my
exactly
punchline.
it. That's
and
right.
vice versa doesn't work, right?
That's
And
right.
vice versa doesn't work. Very important.
Yes.
That's right.
So, and I think we as security first sort of practitioners will focus on, look, I really actually want my environment to be secure. Oh, and guess what? All these compliance requirements that we see, oh yeah, sure, check, done.
Yep.
Translate, map. Here's how we do it. Well, and the reason I bring it up is that a lot of startups who aren't founded by CISOs, like all of them, there comes a point where they're like, okay, we need something here. We need something security wise. We've got customers asking, and the hand waving isn't going to last forever. So they bring in a vCISO org, and the vCISO org, and they might say to them like, hey, we don't feel super comfortable. Like, we have these secrets on laptops. Can you help us with that? Or we don't really know what's facing the internet. I don't really know what's bundled in. Like, I feel icky, can you? And a lot of the vCISOs will say like, whoa, don't waste any time with all the tactical bits. I want to get in the weeds. We need to start with an inventory. We need to start with a framework. So let's start out with NIST or ISO 27001. There's 300 things. We're going to start with number one, and hold on, I'm going to take an assessment and go through all of it, and then start from there. I don't like that approach whatsoever, but a lot of people, that's how they start, and that's starting with compliance. And then their dream is that when they're done with that, then they can start worrying about, like you did, the tactical issues, because it'll fit under one of those categories neatly, and they'll already have momentum. Are you starting with any kind of framework at your scale?
Interesting. So I'm going to go first, Jerry, and Sunil. I don't know if my mind has been infected through all these years. And I believe half of this stuff myself. I'm starting to believe this crap I'm saying. So I always have to question myself. But I do go back to, remember those critical security controls of yesterday? Those top 10 that used to call it.
Top 18 now.
I'm going to sound like so like caveman here, but it's not a bad place to start if you have, I mean, you want to get a risk assessment and get a profile of your company and get understanding of your risk as a company. First, that would be the first thing I would do. Then I would probably, probably the critical security controls are the things I'm going to go try to deploy.
Well,
And it's
so
not,
so
I
in
didn't even say critical security controls. It's just in my head
well,
now. That's the problem.
yeah, it's
Well,
okay.
okay. So the framing here was we are founders of a company, and so hopefully we know the nature of our business. So we got that part done. All right. But really, part of that for me is understanding what matters the most for me as a business as it pertains to my attack surfaces of devices, applications, networks, data, and users. As a company that has a customer-facing application that consumes customer data, my two big priorities are application security and data security. Okay, and so of course with the application security, be mean to your code and run it through the gauntlet and like make sure that it's free of vulnerability. All the kind of stuff that you'd expect a good AppSec program to do. On the data side, to your point earlier, having a breach is one thing. Losing your customer data, okay, game over, right? That really is like that's bad, bad, bad. But one of the things that I tried to do from like early on is to say, all right, how do I ensure that customer data doesn't leave the environment that it's supposed to be in, and anyone who has access to it is properly logged and audited, and no one has standing permissions to it. It's all just in time. But anybody who needs access to it for some reason has to go through an approved two-person, like a two-party approval type of process. And if there's any data that leaves that environment, I haven't. There are features here that I haven't implemented, but there are companies there are some DLP companies that flag that content so that it originated from here and it traces it and so on and so forth. I'm thinking about creating a browser extension that does the same thing. But anyway, but the point is that we try to keep the data in as tight of a location as possible. This helps address a lot of the DLP concerns that we get in all the questionnaires. So the DLP compliance part of it becomes easier for me to say, well, look, there's zero reason why any of this customer data, the data that we care about, should be anywhere besides this location, and we have a fully audited process to know how it's accessed, if it's accessed ever at all. And so these are the kind of controls that I bake in from day one because those are the most important assets. Third on my list as a startup is my device security, and I mentioned again the NPM compromises
The
and such
endpoint.
being another one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Totally.
So
the endpoint.
So do I care about insider threat? I mean, at some level maybe, but no. I mean, we're hiring people as a startup. You are very cautious about who you hire, and so insider threat's less of a concern. And then network security. What network?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yes. But see, like the way you're approaching it is kind of bucketing it by categories that would contain controls. So it's kind of like, but they're not at all parallel constructs. Like insider threat, I'm going to use ones that you said, if I remember well. Insider threat, data security, and device security. Let's use those three, right? Those aren't parallel constructs at all. Like, with data security, you're getting kind of close to the original problem, which is I don't want to lose my customers' data. Yeah, that's good. That's data security. And then device control, but you don't really care about the device, you care about the data, and therefore you need to worry about the controls that are on the device. So
Yeah.
there's this big connection. And if you
Well,
worry about insider threat, it would be because they might give up the customer data again. So
yeah,
right,
yeah.
those are like
But that you're confusing secondary, tertiary sort of side effects from the primary side effect, right? So the primary concern I have with AppSec is I just don't want my application to get popped. Yes, could you get customer data after that? Sure, you can do a lot of things after that. Okay, my data security is around I don't want my employees having access to things that they shouldn't have access to, right? And if I can prevent my employees from doing that, then I can certainly prevent the attacker from or having to
Yeah.
jump through more hoops to get to that point.
Data security is that big planet. That's the big, and you'll have these planets depending on what the priority is. And within those planets, there's satellites that are rotating around. And what the hell is this all about? Think about endpoint. Data security is my primary thing I'm trying to protect. How are these things like endpoint are interacting with that data is important to me.
So
Well, you're talking about
you're
intermediate
grasping.
points. You're talking about intermediate points to get to my customer data,
Correct.
whether that's through the endpoint or through the
Correct.
application.
Correct.
But I'm not considering those as waypoints to my customer data. I'm saying the endpoint itself houses or has stuff that I'd like to secure. I don't want my endpoint to be popped, regardless of what it, regardless of what other things it grants you access to.
I see.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I mean, I think like Mario, you were immediately yearning for a hierarchical taxonomy, right? The solar system thing, and that makes sense. But to me, like device security not being a parallel of data security, like it's like having a whole other solar system that supposedly is also a planet off of your solar system, and just kind of a mess. I mean, what I like is like who, what, when, where, why.
So you're talking about
data security
visibility,
is
but having visibility into the things that are happening in your environment that you like, right?
No, I'm
wanna
just
have
saying
some
like
level of
data security is the
visibility.
mission. That's what we're worried about here, and then the
Right.
how is where
Yeah.
we get into the device or whatever it may be, and because to Sunil's point earlier, code security and all that can lead to a lot of different bad outcomes, and the bad outcomes are what we're really worried about. Yeah.
Sunil,
Well,
you're on mute.
So let me restate what I meant earlier. I use the cyber defense matrix as a prioritization mechanism where I look at the 5 asset classes and say, as a business, which of these, I can't pick all of them. I have to pick one, maybe 2 of these that matter the most to me based on the nature of my business. If I'm a drone manufacturer, I may actually consider device security to be much more important than anything else. Okay. If I'm a personnel organization, I outsource, North Korean IT workers or something, then I may consider user security to be more important than anything else. And my point is that different businesses have different priorities.
Yeah.
Totally agree.
But aren't you okay? But I swear, guys, let's just come out. This is all like critical security control framework kind of stuff we're talking about here. Okay. I think what ends up happening, the missing component is that some people take all these things and says, we got to do all 300 controls without first thinking about saying, hey, tell me of these controls, what's most applicable to your current risk, one, and out of those controls that you pick, which ones are the most critical within those controls? That's just doing risk assessment on that.
And you can't do that with 300 items, even with ISO or with, I mean, there's
You
just
can't do that
so
with
much,
300 items. No way.
There's so much crap. I mean, when you're talking about like the 20 top controls of CIS or whatever, you could do that with that. Like even if you threw out a few of them, you could get through all 20 in one session. With the 300, you get so sidelined with things that are nebulous and floaty and have nothing to do with operations, and just trying to get around that, it just becomes
So the way I've done it is by taking the massive numbers of controls and creating filters that says, given what I think is most important, my assets that I actually care about, like remove. Don't even worry. I'm not going to even worry about identifying those other assets that just are outside of that scope. Let me be extreme here for just a moment. I don't mean this explicitly, but to some degree I do.
Oh, he's going there. Go, Sounil. Go.
The number one control. Like top 1 control is like inventory your devices. Okay.
Do you really believe that? Because I hate that. Everybody says that. I think that's total bull hockey. Yes, Mario said.
Which is actually, again, that's my point. I actually care more about my applications and my data. Okay. And critical control number 1 is all about inventorying essentially your hardware assets or your endpoints.
You're talking about what in the CIS top 20? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're not saying
it's your number 1.
No. I was just picking out what is number 1 in the.
It's number 1. Critical security control is what he's talking about.
And number 2 in the critical security controls is inventory of software that's running on your endpoints.
Yeah.
I'm like, anybody who thinks they have their inventory of software on your endpoints, like, get real, right?
But Sounil, the beauty of that model is number 1, inventory everything. Number 2, when you have some massive breach 3.5 years later, you can just say, look, nobody would help me build the inventory. It's all like the CYA matrix.
Yeah, perhaps. But that's really help you move the needle in terms of the things that you care about. So what I cared about more than that was I want to inventory my software, like not my installed software, but like what packages, what people are using.
What's running in your production environment that you want.
And where my data is and where my customer data is. By the way, those happen to be like number 6 and number 12 or something like in the top.
And it's tough.
Whatever.
Well,
And
let
to
me ask
Sunil's
you. You
point is
touched on
what
something earlier, and I want to ask both of you guys. Like, so back to the startup CISO and all of that, and you talked about app security and code security. Sunil, that's like being pretty important given your threat model. So we're on the same page there. But let's talk about that in anger, right? Because any startup today is engineering forward, and ours, all three of ours are as well. SAST, right? So the notion of something being in there, and we're generating code. We have agents generating code as well. And the idea of SAST is that they're going to find bad patterns and mistakes that could possibly lead to security issues in there. And the general idea is like that's become like table stakes in a lot of security conversations. You have to have SAST. You have to have SAST. I don't know. I don't think SAST is. What I want to ask you guys is like, for one, any cool new tools, any especially like agentic forward SaaS solutions that you guys are really excited about, anything that really fixes it. And then are there findings come out of SaaS processes that you think, ooh, it's so good that I found that, because otherwise we would have had a real potential exploit?
if I were going to
Well,
use something like to do code on my behalf for some of these people who have less experience on it, I would at minimum want whatever's writing my code on my behalf to adhere to certain really basic, freaking no nonsense type of stuff, right? When it comes to security. Like, okay, I'm going to make it really stupid and simple. You're going to use TLS. You're going to use whatever TLS version is the most secure TLS version. That's what everybody uses. I mean, nobody doesn't use TLS anymore, but you get my point. Uh, how to handle secrets. Is this code if you're going to use somebody else's code
Oh,
to
it's not
generate?
easy. That's really hard. But SAST isn't going to touch either of that crap. Like,
But I
are
mean, I'm
you
just
running
saying
through
about a
and looking at
company that you
source
use
code
their
something? And
yeah. Well, I'm not
yeah,
talking about
well, what are we
SaaS. I'm
finding
just,
with SAST? Yeah, I'm just
yeah.
curious because like that's something everybody's shopping for these days because they're being told that that's right after inventory. Are you having luck with that, Sunil? You care?
well, yeah, I do care.
Sounded like it.
And I care in a slightly different way, which is if there are things, especially in open source, if you have
Yeah.
if you have something in open source that you can run basic SaaS through, and it says, oh, here's a vulnerability, it's sort of like a minimum do care sort of standard. Okay, things that can be easily discovered through a SaaS tool, and now with commodity AI models and proper harnesses, those should be that's like do care. If you're not fixing those things, then you're not meeting
And
a standard do
just to be
care.
clear, quick little inject here. The threat model here is that you guys, as a known and trusted cybersecurity AI company offering open source to the community, that's awesome. The threat model to you is if you have the most pedantic, stupid little security risk in there, people might, oh, how can you believe a security company is sharing this code that's full of security holes? And then the damage is done. It has nothing to do with the exploit, right? I mean, you just can't afford optics wise to fail a
Yeah,
SaaS
I mean,
scanner because you didn't run it yourself first.
take anybody's SOC 2, and they'll say, yes, we have secure software development lifecycle processes. And you find something that's so like, wait a second, I could have found, anybody could have found this. And you're like,
You mean
what?
smart, like reputationally? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe that you actually have secure software development practices then, right?
Yeah, because your underbelly is exposed. It's like unlike all our shops and anybody else, you're actually putting the code out there, so other people can run SAST on it. And if they find stuff and you didn't, it's obvious you didn't run SAST stuff.
Yeah. Now, granted, there are many other reasons why that may not be fixed. I mean, there's a bazillion open source uh, um, issues that have been raised around vulnerabilities, but they haven't been implemented yet, right? And in the same way, there may be reasons why, even though someone has found an issue, it hasn't been fixed for whatever reason. Go ask Microsoft why it's the case, and I'm sure plenty of stories as to why they haven't fixed known vulnerabilities for some time. And
There's compatibility for the existing clients that if they do patch, it might
lots
break
of
a
reasons.
customer's environment. That's
Right.
the one that, yeah.
Well, I think to a large degree, those are the things where the customization, I think there's a huge opportunity for more customization to customer environments or to your specific environment. But that requires you to then turn third-party code into first-party code, right? It requires you to take open source and make it first-party. But now you're in your own, it's within your own control, and then you now have the due diligence or the basic due care of making sure that you're running your code through those paces anyway.
So are we finding stuff with SAST that we're so glad we had SAST for? I mean,
It was,
your model, Sounil, I think
SAST
has to be.
SAST has always been full of false positives. What I think we're seeing though is that the SAST results is a great form of context that you give a large language model to then say, hey, here's what a SAST scanner found. Go and see if these are actually legit.
It's cool.
Totally.
That's right. That is right.
Yeah,
that's the right
that's
thing
it.
to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know that that's number one for most startups even in the engineering space is to rush to deploy something SaaS-wise. And some will say, well, yeah, but now you got Claude in the code, so we really have to check it for bugs. I don't know. I think that the bug incidence rate would be slightly lower with Claude than with the average developer.
I love what Sounil said because I'm going to use a different example. I've been learning a new language, and as part of learning my new language, I have my tutor that I hire is helping me.
Is it Rust or Go? Are you just still that? Are you still on Go?
That's right. And so we have that's right. We have a Google Doc where we talk about all the different verbs and things that I'm working on that I'm missing, blah blah blah. So I grabbed that information. I uploaded to Claude and said, go and write me a simulation based on these things that you're looking at, what I'm studying and what I'm having issues with, and go write a simulation that's going to help me learn that better. And so this is kind of the SaaS thing that Sunil's highlighting. It creates context. It allows the machine the AI machine to help you out better.
Yeah, I mean, I think using AI to validate findings, done. That's just fire.
Right.
And SAST is one, but same with the auditor reports, right? I mean, you know how great it would be if every auditor report you could say, no, we had someone gamify this and we ran it through AI and couldn't really exploit it, so we decided to close out your finding and not actually fix that. I mean, that'd actually be productive and helpful, I would say. All right, so don't start with compliance necessarily, but some frameworks can be okay. But when you get secure, it's easier to become compliant. Last thing, I want to follow up on a topic we brought at the executive order that came out that, among other things, included the potential 30-day voluntary coercion to open up frontier AI models to USG inspection. One of the things we talked about off of that was the coordination of patch identification and vulnerability that was buried in that EO was a requirement for the Secretary of Treasury in conjunction with some spooks in the NSA to come up with this private sector cabal of people that would coordinate on patch and all that. Sounds like maybe that's taking form, or there's something called a CRETES that Sounil turned me on to. Tell us a little bit about that, Sounil, and whether or not it's responsive to that EO or just complementary.
Yeah, I feel like the EO is more reflecting what has already been done, or things. This was already kind of in motion, and maybe the EO just made it much more official and effectively. But yeah, CRETES, I haven't heard anyone actually pronounce it yet. Is this coordinated effort for disclosure of open source vulnerabilities? And there's some other real hard problems that we need to fix that this doesn't directly address. But it is this notion that we're trying to at least not step over, not trying to reduce some of the redundancy that we see, especially for the maintainers who were getting many reports of vulnerabilities discovered through these AI systems, and many of them were just redundant because you point mythos at it from 3 different angles, and you may end up finding the same vulnerabilities over and over again. So this was intended to try to create some order for the maintainers, because the maintainers are just absolutely overwhelmed with the number of patches or vulnerability findings. But what is actually also interesting is that going back to my earlier comment about if it's discoverable through mythos, that's one thing. If it's discoverable through a commodity, if it's discoverable through GLM 5.2, the most recent Chinese open weight model, then the perspective is that this should be treated immediately as public knowledge, which I think is the right way to think about it.
That's a CRETES viewpoint, or whose viewpoint is that? Okay.
Well, I think that is. Yeah. But I think that's something that the libxml2 maintainers made the statement a couple months ago. Hey, if you send us a vulnerability report, we are treating it like a bug and posting it for immediate, like for everyone to know.
Yeah,
And
you
I
know, I
don't
think it
know.
goes back to we were talking about a moment ago an AI validation harness, if you will, for any kind of bug reports, and I think that just mates up so well with that for individual companies that hear about something. Right, I mean, you get a report of it, try to exploit it, run it to ground.
Yeah. I think though in these cases, well, the presumption I would make, it's not true for everything, but the presumption I would make, at least for those more recently, those who've had access to Mythos, is that they've actually validated that it is a real vulnerability. And I would imagine those people who are part of this group would have validated that these are real issues, not the AI slop.
Well, yeah, no, I'm just saying in context, right? So, like, yeah, it's a real issue if all the requirements are met, but are the requirements met in our case? And that's where I think in-house AI harnesses that are able to say, like, okay, we have this library, there's this new thing that came out of Acredes about it. We therefore know how to exploit it. AI, go for it from the outside, and it may find, oh, well, you're using it in a different way, or you're not employing that method, or whatever it may be. And that's a contextualization that will still be very valuable in prioritizing whether or not you should care.
Yep, I agree.
All right, cool. All right, guys. As always, a lot of fun chatting with you guys. It'll be fun to see what develops over the next few weeks, and as we roll into summer, will be fun to see if the adversaries take the summer off or not. But I'm guessing they won't.